Welcome to Good Gut Live. We are here live with you pretty much every Friday in some way, shape, or form. Welcome. We're really excited to be here. Today is an excellent topic. We're really getting into the excitement around chronic disease. So if you're watching this live, you can interact live. You can ask us questions live. There's been a lot of buzz around chronic disease. It's definitely been in the news. It's a great thing. We need to be talking about this more and more, honestly. If we can really bring up this topic more and more, it's near and dear to our hearts, as you all can imagine, as you all can guess. And if you aren't aware of who we are, my name is James Marin. I'm an integrative registered dietitian, environmental nutritionist.
I'm Dahlia Marin. I am an integrative gut health dietitian and one of the co-founders of Married to Health.
And Married to Health is a integrative dietetics private practice. We have 8 total dietitians, all working in one way, shape, or form to end chronic disease. We believe in the ability of everyone to heal with each meal. We believe in the power of food. And today's topic is really, does every major chronic disease link to the gut? So we want to talk about chronic disease. I want to talk about its links to the gut. I want to really then towards the end give you actionable items and really um, what we feel can be a useful tool against really all chronic disease and really taking action in your life, and what we can all do and what we all have a responsibility to do. So let me pull up the chat a little bit as we get into it. So yeah, I want to see if you guys have any questions as we're going through this, but let me know. I mean, if you've been hearing about chronic disease, I know there was a roundtable in the US Congress. I know a lot of figures. I mean, you see Food Babe and you see all these figures on social media really speaking up, and so many for a long time, especially in the wellness space of social media, really have been speaking up about chronic disease for a long time. But I think what we're seeing is this tipping point. What we're seeing is a lot of factors coming in all at once. I would say one of the biggest that many aren't aware of is the factor of the baby boomer generation getting older. And we're all getting older, obviously, but the baby boomer generation is really approaching a tipping point of being older and then needing care. So getting to a point of age where they will need a lot of help and they will need a lot of care. And that is significant because the baby boomer generation makes up a significant portion of our population. So just to show you and just to share with you, so if right now, which I want to show you here, so if right now, we're looking at these causes of disease, if we're looking at, some of the number one leading causes of death, heart disease being number one, approaching, getting closer to almost 1 million heart disease deaths in a year, cancer, accidents. So this is like injuries as well as medical accidents and medical malpractice, COVID, which is viral, stroke, chronic lower respiratory disease, Alzheimer's, diabetes, nephritis, chronic liver disease, and cirrhosis. Many of these are preventable. So if we're seeing this amount of death and injury from chronic disease now, and then another interesting statistic, let me see where I put it. I have a lot of tabs up, lots to talk about here. In the US, so if right now the pharmaceutical industry revenue has been growing, so if they are making, I mean, billions, hundreds of billions of dollars, if what we're spending is, in 2022 alone, the United States spent 4.5 trillion on healthcare. 4.5 trillion. That is an insane number. It is 17.3% of the country's GDP. If you're not familiar, gross domestic product. This is like you're selling, iPhones and Teslas and all. It's like 17.3% of all the sales and everything we sell in the United States. About 20, I would say even like 20% is just our health, is healthcare costs. And you see it broken down, further, where we're almost spending $1 trillion just on Medicare. So this gets into government subsidies. This gets into what our tax dollars are being spent on. And all of this to point out really that it's so important to understand this is not trending in a direction where it's getting better, right? This
Mm.
isn't trending in a direction where we're going to be like, oh, well, things are going to calm down, right? Like it's not trending in a direction where we're going to say like, yeah, it's like this now, but pretty soon it's going to stop. It's actually the opposite. And trust me, this isn't a doom and gloom podcast episode. This is just kind of we saw this in the news. I saw this in the news and really want to touch on it and really connect it and hone in on what we can do together as a community, to what we can do individually as, all of us individually wanting to be healthy, all of us having family members who want to be healthy, all of us having family members who are likely have experienced one of
Mhm.
those diseases we've mentioned, right? So this isn't like some out there political or out there ideology or out there like fringe health concept. This is right here in our bodies, in our homes, in our guts, right? We are feeling this each and every day. So it's so important to talk about and to discuss for sure.
It is. And it's not rare. It's not extremely impossible, but it is seldom that you're going to find someone who is living with at least one of those chronic diseases that is very largely preventable with lifestyle intervention, who does not have some type of gut issue. Whether
Oh
that
yeah.
is, even if somebody, because I think people think gut issues and they think, oh no, I'm not bloated. I don't have
Yeah.
stomach pain. Are you constipated? Because
Mhm.
if you do have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, high blood sugar, diabetes, usually, not always, especially, with type 1 and, gestational diabetes being an exception. But if you have type 2
Mhm.
diabetes, are you consuming enough fiber, which not only helps to regulate blood sugar, blood pressure, cholesterol, it also will help to regulate your bowels. So,
Mhm.
really taking that time asking yourself, do I have great gut health? Do I have acid reflux?
Mhm.
Which there's so much crossover between chronic disease and acid reflux. Again, because most people with chronic disease don't consume sufficient amounts of fiber, are constipated, and that's giving them acid reflux as well. So, asking those questions, are
Yeah.
you exceptionally gassy? Are you constantly belching? Maybe you do have the full blown stomach pain and,
Mhm.
visceral hypersensitivity, but there's so often that overlap between both things, and it's for similar reasons.
And there's evidence of this overlap. So it's extremely important, yeah, as we segue into this, really the gut connection to all this,
Mm,
because we are seeing the gut is connected to everything. So, Dahlia and Rachel are dietitians on our team who focus on the gut. We have other dietitians on our team, but really everyone at Married Health is very gut centric. Whether they maybe not always start out that way, but they become that way as they're with us long enough, because we are being integrative just means connecting similar things. It's understanding that things that seem separate are actually connected. And so as we follow this rabbit trail down the hole, we see, oh yeah, the gut brain axis. Now it's like, oh yeah, those who are in the know, those who are on PubMed and reading, the annals of gastroenterology and looking at the journals and the research go, yeah, the gut brain axis, the gut brain connection. That wasn't always known. Even 15 years ago, they'd be like, what? Like you're kind of wacky and crazy.
mm,
Even 20 years ago, the gut microbiome, what is that? Oh, that's foo-foo crazy science, right? And now we're seeing all these connections to the gut, right? The gut brain axis being one. We'll go to another one, the gut hormone axis, right? So
mm,
this is really the gut microbiome and sex hormone related diseases. So this is huge when it comes to breast cancer. Understanding we were just recently talking about the gut breast cancer connection,
mm,
which is like, what? How is that a connection? And for so many in the space before learning about the gut microbiome, we're like, breast cancer is a hormonal related issue that has
mm,
nothing to do with the gut microbiome. Well, now we know the gut microbiome helps us regulate our hormones. The gut microbiome helps us produce and recycle hormones, and the list goes on and on and on. And so we see these in that connection. We can keep going, right? The gut muscle connection, right? So gut muscle crosstalk. So even if you're like, well, this doesn't matter, I'm really fit, I'm really muscular, I'm into fitness and other topics. Well, your muscle microbiome is a real thing, and it's connected to your gut microbiome. So even if you're like, I just want to be fit and healthy and have a six pack, well, the microbiome is going to affect you, right? And it matters. So I think I have one more. Yeah, one of my favorites, the gut exposome. So exposome is a fancy word for environment. So this
Mm.
is where the gut environment connection. So your environment matters. Those people smoking, or that fragrance you have in your home, the off gassing of certain plastics and appliances you have in your home. So we're touching on so many different topics, all to say that this all hones back in on a really, really simple practice. And we want to leave you with simple tips. I know this seems like such a huge concept, but why I wanted to speak on this, and really something very important, is to remind you, you have power, right? You carry with you the most important ecosystem on the planet, which is your gut microbiome. It doesn't have to be this like outward microbiome. I have nothing to do with it. I don't know. It seems too big. You have a gut microbiome, right? I assume you do. I think you do. Otherwise, you would not be alive.
Everyone.
Everyone has one. You have one. So it really goes back to, what are you doing for your gut microbiome? How are you treating this beautiful gut microbiome? If you're like me, and I don't really like to see, I would say most common, I see people littering cigarette butts, and that really irks me. It's one of my pet peeves. I'll like stop people and be like, "Hey, can you please pick that up?" Or like, Dahlia sees me do that sometimes. Or even if someone litters trash anywhere. So it's like, if you're like me, I think a lot of people, especially in Southern California, are like that. What do you, if you value these ecosystems, whether it's your local park, or, outside in front of your curb, or it's like a national, Zion National Park, if you don't want someone littering there, then what are you doing to the, I would say, an even more important ecosystem, your gut ecosystem, right?
Mm.
Are you littering? Are you treating your gut ecosystem with the same respect you would treat the outside ecosystem, right? Whether that is Zion National Park or something else, right? So it's important to reframe this in a message where you have a lot of power. You have a lot of say of what happens to the most important ecosystem in the planet. And it is a direct connection to all of the chronic disease we are seeing in this world and on this planet right now. So very important. And I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but
No, I think that was well stated. And you might be listening to this and you're like, well, shoot, what do I do?
now what?
Yes. So, we always like you all to feel like you're walking with practical action steps and
Yes.
next things that you can be looking into, recommending to those you care about. Maybe you have that one person in mind where you're like, oh, my cousin needs to hear this. My dad needs to hear this. My boyfriend needs to hear this. My, whoever needs to hear
Whoever
this.
you love,
Whoever you love. And,
send them this episode immediately.
yes. So if you do have one of those chronic disease diagnoses and you're realizing I or someone I love also is having some of these gut symptoms, they are constipated, start with adding. I think people feel overwhelmed with lifestyle change because they feel like they have to take away everything they love. They're like, I don't want to give up my favorite drinks and my favorite foods, and I don't want to have to give up my time to go to the gym. Don't start there. Get there, but don't start there. Start with adding.
Yeah.
And fiber is always something that we recommend adding. If you are not accustomed to eating fiber, maybe don't jump into having a bunch of beans and broccoli, but maybe you're starting low and slow. You're starting with some easy to digest items. Maybe you're adding some fruit and you're adding in cucumbers and tomatoes and butter lettuce. All of that will help and all of that will make a difference. So you always want to start with adding things. Add some water, hydrate your stool a little bit more, hydrate your gut a little bit more, but start and then see what else you can glean and see what else you can add. Add a little bit more sleep, add a little bit more physical activity, add a little bit more self-care, even if it's 5 minutes of those things, but just focus on what can I add? And then naturally, usually other things just kind of aren't as appealing. With so many of my patients, they're so worried about giving up refined sugar. And we just start with adding. Let's add fruit, let's add other alternatives. And then they just slowly stop having the added and refined sugar. And they're like, oh, I had it a few times and actually was too sweet for me. Didn't feel great. So start with adding some great fiber to the diet. And that can be so, so, so helpful.
Yes, I want to show in that sense of adding what well, I want to show this. So this is a really cool article that came out a
Just
couple of
this
days ago,
week.
like
Oh.
4 days ago, which is really interesting. So,
Mm.
how the future of medicine will revolve around our gut. And what I find interesting about this article, you can find on Medscape. You can Google this and read the article. Article is very interesting, very very well done article. But what is very interesting, what I want to point back to, is the idea that food is medicine, right? And for the last 100 years, what we've been seeing happen, and why what Dahlia is saying is very important, adding in adding in the foods, right? Especially adding in the colors, adding in the fiber, adding
Mm.
in the volatile, beautiful, effervescent foods that where you crack it open and you smell that garlic, and you can. We were cooking with basil recently, and someone who was like in 2 rooms down was like, I could smell the basil from across the room, right? Or even in the other room, and it's these beautiful foods with beautiful smells that we just really take for granted. And why it's so important is now we're seeing publications, and we're seeing other organizations talk about microbes and talk about medicine for our microbes now. But really, the support and the medicine and the love for our microbes has been in the food for the last thousands, millions, however many years since our existence, right? And what we've seen over the last 100 years actually is this degradation of that, is this stripping away of the medicine from our food, and it's almost become like a la carte option where it's like, do you want medicine now? Okay, that's separate from the food. What we've done is we've stripped out the fiber, we've stripped out the vitamins and minerals from this ultra processing. We've repackaged it for you as a chip, as a cracker, as a snack, as
Mm.
a whatever product on the shelf that's very colorful and bright. We're marketing it to your kids, and you eat that, and then when you're sick, here's your medicine separate. And that's no longer working. That paradigm is breaking down. It's
Mm.
come up very quickly in the last 100 years, and now it's breaking down. And as far as going into tips, what we can do to continue to break this down and get back to a healthier normal, get back to a place where we can just by default thrive in health, is caring for the smallest. We are, if I can kind of, we're going to go into some of the detail a little bit, like Dahlia's mentioning some detailed steps and tips. But if I could just break it down in this concept, in this kind of bigger macro concept, is if you care for the tiniest, which is our microbes, you will by default care for the rest. So if you can care for your microbes and really love on them, you will by default care for the rest. And so when we are now seeing organizations go, the future of medicine will be giving medicine to your microbes, we
Mm.
then ask the question, well, what can we do to give medicine to our microbes? And so one of the biggest
Antibiotics.
yeah, antibiotics. No, we need a pharmaceutical company to invent a synthetic microbial medicine, right? That's what we need. No, that's not what we need. What we need are foods that luckily have been studied, and even some ancient foods that have even been studied. And we did a whole episode on it, fermented foods, where you're getting the microbe and some of the medicine and some of even the postbiotic products that are even medicinal to us all in one. And so one of the tips I say, and again, we echo this, is eat your fermented foods, which is
Mhm.
huge. So as far as adding in those fermented foods are not only going to add in the healthy microbe to your gut, it's going to bring in the medicine, so to speak, with it, right? If I had to say another type of food that we recommend adding and just keeping into your rotation is herbs.
Mhm.
Fresh herbs and dried herbs. Your microbes love to eat herbs. If you're talking about microbial medicine, which is a cool new term I want to start using, especially after
Mm.
seeing this article, the microbial medicine are fresh and dried herbs. So study after study really shows, and this even could get into spices like turmeric and various colored spices. Um, we're not eating those. Yes, we're eating them. We're putting them in our mouth, but really, who is breaking them down and using them are our microbes.
Mm.
And so it's very important to understand that, and let hopefully, if you're listening to this episode, let it be a reminder for you that you are eating for not just one, but a trillion, right? You're eating for multiple trillion. So you're not only pregnant, you're a super organism carrying trillions and trillions of microbes with you, and it's your responsibility to care for these microbes. So in this beautiful sense, in this beautiful tip of care for the tiniest, add specifically fermented foods and herbs and spices are some of the biggest things you can add and just keep in your rotation to keep you and your kids, your extended family, whoever's in your sphere, healthy and thriving, and really kind of going against the norm that we're seeing, unfortunately, this norm of medicine's a la carte. It's not part of your food. It's separate from food, right? And that's what we've seen over the last 80 to 100 years really play out, and it's not working well, right? So I don't want to get back into the doom and gloom stats, but I mean, we know, looking at the stats, reading the studies, please look into it yourself. It's not working well, right? Our baby boomer generation is in trouble. Our kids are now expected to be the unhealthiest generation than their predecessors. So it's extremely important, as we're seeing chronic disease on the rise, that we do everything possible to move in the other direction, right? We must kind of change course immediately. And it starts with you. You're a help to that. You can play a part in that. And it doesn't have to be you going to the Capitol. It doesn't have to be you even sending an email. It doesn't have to be you signing a petition. It starts with, what are you putting in your cup? What are you putting on your plate? Plugging into those resources and really taking action to heal with each meal every single day.
And how are you?
We're seeing some questions. I love it.
Kids, yeah.
You want me to read that one?
How much fiber do kids need? This really is going to depend on the child's age and their gender as well. But we do know from 1 to 3 years, kids need about 19-20 grams of fiber a day. And then once they get above 4 years old, they're going up to 25 grams. And then from there, a teenage girl needs about 26 grams of fiber a day. A teenage boy needs about 38 grams of fiber a day. So we're building little by little, but you do want to offer in every single meal fruits, vegetables, whole grains, ideally also nuts and seeds. So you're really offering that variety in every meal. And then they're making that natural progression, because as they're growing, they're eating more. And so we're being mindful about what we're filling their plates and filling their little tummies with. I see a lot of toddler parents very heavily reliant on milk, even if it's plant milk, for just sustenance for their kids. And while that can bring great nutrients, it brings calcium. If it's fortified, it has vitamin D, sometimes B vitamins. It doesn't really provide fiber. So provide that for those benefits and for great calories, but also be mindful of just offering that fiber in every single meal, and try to involve the kids in it as well. You might not go for everything that you're making, but really just educating them along the way will help to empower them to really know throughout their lifespan why they're eating these things, and help them want to grow as their fiber requirements grow with them. So then we're not kind of thinking, okay, they're kids, they're active, they can eat kid food. And then once they're older and maybe they start getting a little bit sick, then they'll learn to eat the fiber. It's really teaching them as they grow.
So again, fiber is medicine. The foods containing fiber, which are plant foods, are going to contain medicine, especially if you are going to the farmer's market, growing even your own, finding foods that are grown in healthy, composted and rotated soils. It's extremely important. I mean, this is where the medicinal properties of food are really coming from. The different tastes of bitters and natural sweets and aromatic foods, and all these properties in food really clue you in on how medicinal these foods are. And really, these medicinal properties are used by your microbes in your gut. So another great question coming in: is sourdough considered but probably meant fermented? So sourdough is fermented. It can be, there's even like triple fermented sourdough, but I wouldn't say it's considered a source of probiotics. So like, that's the differentiation. It's great. What you're doing is allowing the starter or whatever you're using on the dough, and you're letting it sit there and rise and take action and bubble and ferment,
Break down the
essentially,
gluten.
it's breaking down the gluten, right? It's breaking down some of the proteins and even carbohydrates and fiber in the bread to then give you a product that is easier for you to digest and use. So that's the benefit of fermented sourdough. It's not so much that it's a great probiotic source. Something that would be a probiotic source would be like sauerkraut or kimchi that's raw and hasn't been altered or cooked or heated. It's important that those kind of raw fermented foods are it's so important that you understand that those are the active and living fermented foods that are going to give you those probiotics. So that's important.
And because you're baking the bread at that high of heat, whatever probiotics do develop during that fermentation process, as that sourdough starter is going, they really do get burned off. Bacteria really live best under 175 degrees Fahrenheit. So your bread is unlikely to fully cook at that low of a heat. So it's a good prebiotic. It does have that prebiotic fiber, which is food for your probiotic bugs and seeds of your gut. So maybe combine it, put a nice dairy-free cheese on top of your sourdough bread, and hopefully that's been fortified with some bacteria, and you get that prebiotic fiber in the bread, you get that probiotic in the dairy-free cheese, or maybe the sauerkraut or something else that you're putting on top.
Yeah. Hey, what's up? We're seeing some come in. Hey, how are you? How are you? We're good. So yeah, so we love seeing your guys' questions come in. We love seeing the chat come in. So again, this is an overview. I mean, it's nothing. So overall, what if we can end with it's nothing for you to be scared of. We're going to get through this, guys.
Yes.
We're here to heal with each meal. We're here to guide you with this. We're here to give you proper context and structure to really help you understand that this chronic disease epidemic is a symptom. And what we do at Married to Health, what other wonderful integrative practitioners do is look at the symptom and understand it's trying to tell us something. What these chronic diseases are doing are trying to tell us something, that we are disconnected from our gut. We're disconnected from these beautiful little creatures as microbes. We're disconnected from our environment. We're disconnected from each other and our food. It's time to reconnect, right? It's time to reconnect with all of those things. And it takes work. And you're going to put in work. We're going to put in work. And we're going to do this together. So it's important to do this together. So yeah.
We hope that this gives you some inspo. We hope that you continue to want to heal with each meal, just for prevention of chronic disease, to love on your gut bugs, and to feel your absolute best.
And if you're not already, plug in, go to marriedtohealth.com, get on our email list specifically. Just you can click under contact, or at the very bottom, it'll say email list or newsletter. Connect with us, because we are going to be taking action in this area. We want to get you on the farm. You can join us next year on the farm, doing some really cool events, teaching you how to ferment, teaching you what's what about gut health and beyond, emotional health, teaching your kids how to be healthy, teaching you what products you need in your home or what are optimal to really create an exposome that is going to expose you to really great things. So if you're interested in that, marriedhealth.com to learn more, get on our newsletter, and connect with us further. So thank you, guys. Hope you enjoyed this episode. It was a little different, but we'll be back to our normal programming. No, I'm just kidding. No, we love this. We love seeing what's going on and what everyone's kind of buzzing about. And really, it's right up our alley with chronic disease and getting to the root of chronic disease. So we thank you all for joining. We thank you for watching. We thank you, those who are asking questions. If you're watching this later, thank you so much. Feel free to subscribe or comment or share this with friends and family. And as always,
heal with each meal. And we hope you don't forget to feel with